National Basketball Championship. Duke has done it again. Mike Krzyzewski's Blue Devils started the season number 1. They finished number 1. And now, for the second year in a row, they wear the crown of the king.
Although the Duke basketball tradition started long ago, the Duke that became a household name was that of Mike Krzyzewski. Coach K came to Duke in 1980, and by the 1985-86 season, he had reached the Final Four with an experienced group led by All-America shooting guard Johnny Dawkins. The Blue Devils made it back to the Final Four in 1988, 89, 90, and in 1991, they won the school's first national championship. The Blue Devils had ascended to college basketball's greatest height, and the following year would challenge everyone else to dethrone them. No one could. Mike Krzyzewski's Blue Devils reached their 6th Final Four in 7 years and repeated as national champions, becoming the first back-to-back NCAA titleist since the UCLA dynasty of the 60s and 70s. But Duke couldn't stay number 1 forever. Graduation losses set the Blue Devils back a step, but Grant Hill still had 1 season left, and in 1994, he and his teammates helped Duke climb the mountain again. They finished the regular season atop the ACC standings and had Duke playing on Monday night in April for the 4th time in 5 years. The Duke dynasty seemed like it would go on forever, but when the '94 season had ended, Hill and classmates Tony Lang and Marty Clark had to move on.
We depended so much on that senior class, probably more on one class than we had in any of the previous Final Fours except for '86. We knew we were going to have to kind of reload a little bit, and that we were going to be young for a while.
That youth brought plenty of talent with recruits Trajan Langdon, Ricky Price, and Steve Wojciechowski, all McDonald's All-Americans, and made the '94-95 season appear less like rebuilding and more like reloading. The Blue Devils started the year in familiar territory, ranked in the top 10 nationally, and got going just like usual with their 6th straight win over Michigan. Things were running smoothly when the Devils made a December trip to Hawaii for the Rainbow Classic. 2 weeks later, their season was in disarray.
We're heading down to Atlanta to play Georgia Tech, and we just lost a game to Clemson at home. The coach was beat up. We went to Hawaii, and his back was just killing him, so he came in and told the guys, he wasn't going to be able to do it.
Back pain and exhaustion forced Coach Mike Krzyzewski, the mainstay of the Blue Devils' decade of success, to step aside in early January.
Duke 0-2 in the ACC for the first time since 1982. That team started 0-3, and it continues to get tough for Duke.
If you just joined us, Duke was up 23 big ones. Nice penetration and a kick out. Fake. Virginia lays it on Curtis Staples' deuce. Here comes Langdon to tie it. Rebound, Sura. And that's going to be the ball game.
5 seconds. Terps by 2. It's Wojo. Eric being blocked. Joe Smith knocks it out of bounds, and Maryland wins.
As far as why they're not doing as well, I'm probably just as baffled as everybody else.
It comes down to this. The ball in Randolph Childress' hands and the game on the line. Randolph from 14. Got it.
Down to 5 seconds. Simpkins has to force it up, taken away. He got it back. Joe Smith with a tip in.
Well, Duke is going to go down to its 18th defeat. That will be a school record, but you better believe this is a club that will be back.
For the first time since 1983, Duke would not participate in the NCAA tournament. Even worse, Coach K's absence had left a void in the program, one that could take years to fill.
I felt like I put them in a position where they were deserted.
You come to Duke to play for Coach K, and you come to Duke to learn. And during basketball season, when he's not around, it's almost like, you're in shambles.
It's that family atmosphere, that camaraderie that's built, was not able to be built with those kids as freshmen. And we paid the price for that as we tried to rebuild.
1 year later, Duke began its comeback, but was still smarting from Coach K's absence. Langdon, who had started and averaged 11 points as a freshman, missed the season with a knee injury, and he was far from the only Blue Devil who was sidelined. Although the undermanned squad did make the NCAA tournament, it suffered a first-round loss to Eastern Michigan. While the jersey still said Duke, the opponents were no longer intimidated. With the addition of a strong recruiting class and transfer of Roshown McLeod to the lineup, the luster started to creep back the following year. The Blue Devils beat Carolina for the first time in 4 years and won the ACC regular season championship, but they faltered down the stretch.
Because of the high expectations of Duke, for the last so many years, a lot of years, that team never got credit for being, for winning. They won the regular season. 2 years before, they were in last place.
After a narrow first-round win, the second-seeded Devils got smacked by the Providence Friars, seeded 10th in the Southeast region, and went home with another NCAA tournament disappointment.
After the Providence game, they certainly were very disappointed. We never would like to lose, and we thought we could do better, in the tournament. But I think everybody was very excited deep down about the prospects of next year.
Midnight practice brought considerable excitement, much of it centered around 4 new additions to the team. Shane Battier, a forward from Birmingham, Michigan, was practically born to go to Duke. He was a straight-A student, fluent in German, and is one of the top basketball recruits in the country.
I've watched Shane play since he was a freshman in high school.
I just loved Michigan, and every time the Duke played Michigan, Duke would win. I get so mad. I hated Leitner, I hated Grant Hill, I hated Bobby Hurley, I hated the whole Duke aura.
At the head of that aura was one of the coaches who awaited to hear Battier's decision.
I gave him the same spiel I gave the other coaches, thank you so much, I respect you and your program, and I just want to thank you for taking the time to recruit me. And last thing I said was, I got one thing to ask, Coach. He said, what? And I'm like, oh, what number can I wear? And that's how I told him. And he said, any number I want, big fella.
But before the coaches knew where Battier was going, a 17-year-old Peekskill, New York native had already heard the big news.
The day before my press conference, I told my parents and everything. I called Elton. I'm like, I'm about to commit. You're next.
Elton Brand, a 6'8", 260-pound forward, had potential. But because he had faced weak high school competition, he didn't become a high-profile recruit until after his junior year. The phone call from Battier got Brand thinking more about Duke, and the more Brand thought about Duke, the better Duke's chances were with point guard William Avery.
Me and Elton, we always talked about it was going to be, a package deal, and we were on other visits, and we were still saying we was going to Duke. I can remember walking through the streets with the Virginia coaches, and we see a Duke bumper sticker on a car, and we like, hey, that's the move.
On November 4th, Avery committed. 3 days later, Brand followed suit. The class was good, but it had a chance to be a lot better. The plum of their class, 6'10" center Chris Burgess, the #1 prospect in the nation, was stuck between Duke and BYU. Burgess, a Mormon, was getting pressured to attend BYU, and there was plenty of reason to think he might stay out west.
Burgess kind of surprised me. When we got him, though, I was really excited. I thought Burgess would, be a UCLA kid.
But on November 18th, Burgess made himself a Durham kid. The four-man class was the best in the country and brought with it comparisons to Michigan's Fab Five of 1991.
The Fab Five was their own entity, but we're already coming into a great team.
The returning Blue Devils accounted for 69% of the scoring and 70% of the rebounds on the ACC's 1997 regular season champion. There was promising sophomore Chris Carawell, who as a freshman started 9 of the last 11 games. Forward Roshown McLeod, a scorer from the inside and outside, and a solid backcourt. Point guard Steve Wojciechowski led the ACC in steals and ranked 3rd in assists, while shooting guard Trajan Langdon, with little fanfare and a calm demeanor, had led the Devils in scoring and won first-team All-ACC honors. As the new season approached, he was one of 15 candidates for the Naismith Award, given each year to the nation's best player. Langdon's Naismith nomination was just the tip of the iceberg. The Blue Devils were in everyone's preseason top 5 and received #1 votes from Dick Vitale and Sports Illustrated. But the Devils, young as they were, said they were unfazed by the hype.
I saw hype my freshman year, but I also remember what happened. I had very realistic goals, and I thought with the guys and returning and the guys there, we could compete for a national championship.
They also had help dealing with the media, thanks to coaches who had been there before. Krzyzewski was no stranger to the spotlight, and his assistants, Quin Snyder, Johnny Dawkins, and David Henderson, had been through the wars as Duke players. Dawkins and Henderson were the keys to Krzyzewski's first Final Four run, and Snyder, in '88 and '89, served as floor general for back-to-back Final Four teams. Their ability to keep the Devils focused would get tested the second the season started in an opening practice televised by ESPN.
College basketball is back, and there's no greater place to be than at a Duke with all the camera crazy.
Once midnight tipped off, we had ESPN, Dick Vitale, and the Cameron Crazies, we just got energy from them, I guess, We were able to go out there and play, and it was fun.
When the regular season started, the bright lights gave way to a quieter setting. The Blue Devils marched into West Point, Krzyzewski's old stomping grounds, for what promised to be an easy opener with Army.
When I took my team back up to West Point, it was my former player's first game as coach there, Pat Harris. He was my point guard when I was coaching at West Point. To me, it was a celebration of great kids.
For one of those kids, the game provided an early homecoming.
There's a lot of speculation from the older people, older crowds saying, for my town, like my family, you should play about 2 or 3 minutes, and hopefully coach will put you in so we can see you and things like that. And I'm like, I'm going to play.
Brand started, along with his roommate Shane Battier and 3 veterans, Roshown McLeod, Steve Wojciechowski, and Trajan Langdon. The Devils made a statement. They would depend this year on defense and held the cadets to 9 points in the first half. And on offense, they dominated inside, with Brand and Battier combining for 27 points. Still, not all went well for Duke. The Devils played poorly in the second half, and while Brand and Battier sparkled, their third roommate, guard William Avery, started his Duke career on a down note.
I didn't make a class, and you have to be disciplined for it. That's the only way you can have a great program, if you have discipline.
Even with Avery sidelined, no Blue Devil played more than 24 minutes.
We tried different combinations today. Sometimes we platoon the whole unit, and we're still experimenting with our team.
With their first victory in hand, it was back to Durham and Cameron Indoor Stadium.
This building has a soul. It's the soul of the players and the students.
And when the Blue Devils played here, the place became a zoo. But in more recent years, the zoo had been tamed. The 94-95 team lost 6 games at home, and the next year Duke lost to Illinois, breaking a 10-year non-conference win streak. Even in 96-97, while they were winning the ACC title, the Devils dropped a 12-point decision to Wake Forest. But rather than worry about recent losses, the 97-98 Blue Devils looked to the great Duke teams of 86, 91, and 92, all of which went undefeated at Cameron. The Blue Devils used the electricity of the Cameron crowd to ignite their defense with 12 first-half steals, 5 by Shane Battier. But with 13-11 left, they still clung to an 8-point lead. Then the Wildcats learned why Duke was ranked in the top 5. In his first collegiate game, William Avery teamed with Steve Wojciechowski to lead the team in scoring, and when it was all said and done, the Devils had pulled off a 37-7 run and a 100-65 triumph. But before Chris Burgess's dunk sealed the final score, the crowd had a rousing ovation for one of its favorite players, senior walk-on Todd Singleton. Todd came to Duke from Old Mill High School in the fall of '94 with plans to spend more time in the computer lab than in Cameron Indoor Stadium. But that would change on October 23rd.
I didn't even open the Chronicle. I see the Chronicle from across the bus. And I see this young lady there with an ad that said tryouts for the men's varsity basketball team.
Todd was one of 75 Duke students who showed up to try out, but the only one who was asked to come back and work out with the team.
We're in the locker room. I'm just standing by the bathroom. Coach K comes up to me. He says, "You know what we're going to do with you, right?" I said, "No idea, Coach." He said, "Well, when we get back from Hawaii, I'm going to put you on the roster, give you a jersey, and develop you from there."
When Todd first started out, you know, walking and dribbling was a challenge. I'm kidding. It wasn't quite like that. Todd really wanted to be a player. He really wanted to work on his game. He had incredible pride.
That pride drove him to fight the odds and battle for a spot in Duke's rotation, something that had become a possibility during his sophomore year.
I had a really ambitious plan because I figured this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. So I was really looking forward to it, you know, put academics aside for a minute and really focus on basketball. Players are made in the off-season. And 3 days after the season, I got hurt. And at first I thought it was a little growing pull, but it turned out to be a lot more than that.
When it came time for the intra-squad scrimmage that fall, he found himself in a suit on the sideline.
Everyone goes through tough times, and that happened to be mine. That was my toughest time, coming to the realization that I might not be able to earn what I wanted to earn. And so I just had to re-examine, you know, is this what I want to do? And I thought about not staying with it. In retrospect, that would have been very stupid, so I'm fortunate that I made the right decision.
But Singleton earned every second of playing time that he got, and he wore the Duke uniform with the same pride he had as a freshman. Waiting for the opportunity to put his uniform back on was Ricky Price. The one-time California High School Player of the Year and third-team All-Atlantic Coast Conference selection as a sophomore could only sit and watch. He was academically ineligible and would miss his team's first real challenge, the Maui Classic. The Blue Devils' first game in Paradise against the Division II Chaminade Silver Swords seemed as tough as a walk on the beach. That's what another ACC power thought 15 years ago when Ralph Sampson and company cruised through Maui and became victims of one of the biggest upsets in college basketball history.
Yes, Virginia, there is a Chaminade.
Bashane Battier had 14 rebounds, Steve Wojciechowski had 11 assists, Elton Brand had 23 points, and Duke won 106-70. Life wasn't perfect, though. Sophomore Chris Carawell, sidelined by an injured back, had to endure a painfully long flight to Hawaii. And his roommate, Nate James, also missed the Chaminade game with a sprained ankle, suffered against Davidson. If Duke's next opponent had its say, the rest of the Blue Devils would soon be reeling too. The Tigers came out roaring on the second day of the Maui Invitational. But the Blue Devils came back, with Brand leading the way inside and Langdon from the perimeter. And crucial help came from sophomore Mike Chappell, who got the job done on offense and defense. Chappell, who against Missouri started for the third time in 4 games, was coming into his own. He had played well in spurts as a freshman, but was inconsistent, and knew another year of 36% shooting from the field wouldn't cut it. So he lifted weights and worked hard in the offseason and came into the new campaign as one of the most improved Blue Devils. That pleased not only the coaching staff, but 2 of the players who would compete with Chappell for playing time. Chappell, Carawell, and James were all small forwards and all sophomores, but they were also something more.
I mean, I can't really speak enough on that, relationship. I said they're my brothers and I love them.
The 3 roommates were not all alike. Carawell, as outgoing and talkative as any Duke player, played like he lived. He was an aggressive forward, and as a freshman on an undersized club, had played out of position at center. The St. Louis native battled a shoulder injury in '96-'97, but he fought through it and earned a starting spot. Like Carawell, James was a city kid from Washington, D.C. A thumb injury kept him out of the first 14 games of his freshman year, but when he finally arrived, it was with a bang. He could play inside and outside, but barely got a chance to show it.
I know what I can do, and Chris and Mike, they know what I can do. It's just the fact that, like the media and the fans, they really don't know much about me because they haven't seen much.
In contrast was Chappell, a quiet, skinny suburbanite from the Detroit area, and although 6'8", on the court, he preferred finesse to the dirty work in the paint.
One thing I can do is things go wrong.
But he had stepped up against Missouri, and thanks in large part to his 13 points and 5 steals, the Blue Devils would be moving on to the Maui Classic Finals to face one of the previous season's NCAA finalists, either Kentucky or Arizona.
We're missing a good game, just so you know. All right, I think it'll be a good game. Can I have one more and then I need to go and watch them to figure out if we have a chance to win.
The Duke coaches observed as Arizona looked as good as ever, pounding Kentucky in the Maui semifinals. It would be the Devils' first real challenge and the biggest challenge in 4 years for their leader, Steve Wojciechowski. Wojo was the cog that made the Devils run. Duke's team MVP in 1997 and a second-team All-ACC guard. He led the ACC in steals that year and set a school record for best assist-to-turnover ratio in a year. But things hadn't always gone so well. As a freshman, Wojo had come to Duke with high expectations. He was a McDonald's All-American and was living a dream. But it wasn't long before it all came crashing down.
He was just dying, and the guys in the locker room were just at our wits' end. We couldn't believe it. This is not how it's supposed to happen.
A college freshman living his dream isn't supposed to find himself at his high school coach's funeral either, or get a phone call from his mother saying that his father had a cancerous tumor.
Within a 3-week period, you put that on the shoulders of a freshman, let alone a freshman who's in the public eye and playing for a nationally ranked basketball team and supposed to be kind of a key contributor. The added weight and pressure and my thoughts, going towards those guys because they were all just huge parts of my life. It was very tough.
That pressure showed in Wojo's game. His scoring average dropped from 6.9 points per game before Krzyzewski's injury to 1.8 afterward, and in late-game situations, he came up short. But when all looked bleak, Wojo found a soulmate within the basketball program.
At his most bleak hour, I think, I was on the cusp of getting the job. I had interviewed and was in limbo. Coach K was mulling it over. And yeah, I really did want to coach him. I knew he had special stuff.
Quin Snyder, the team's administrative assistant and former Duke point guard, was going through a difficult time and, like Wojo, needed comfort. The two bonded, and with Snyder's help, Wojo made it through a hellish freshman year. When the next season came around, his father was recovering and Coach K was back on the sidelines. But Wojo's game was still AWOL. He had no confidence, shot 31% from the field and started just 4 games, even though the Devils had no other pure point guard. 2 years removed from the McDonald's All-America team, he heard the doubters.
The people on the outside, on the periphery, who are looking in and making judgments aren't there every day in the trenches and there every day in practice to see what I do.
But Snyder, who had been promoted to assistant coach, was there every day and told Wojo that success would come if he would be himself. Wojo got the Devils jump-started from the beginning of his junior year with a tenacious defense and an undying will. But even as he played his way to the all-conference team, his physical limitations kept him back. Opposing fans still called him Slow Joe, a name that looked all too appropriate when UNC's Ed Cota lit him up for a double-double in the Tar Heels' 91-85 win in Chapel Hill. In the NCAA tournament, Providence's quicker God Shamgod ran circles around him, ending Wojo's junior year and the Duke career of his close friend, Jeff Capel.
You know, to see him foul out was extremely tough because I realized that I wasn't going to be able to play with, you know, one of my best friends anymore. And it was just a very tough time. But I also knew that I could, you know, I still had another chance.
That chance to prove that Duke deserved its high ranking and that Wojo belonged with the nation's top point guards would come against Arizona and its All-America point guard, Mike Bibby. The Blue Devils arrived at Lahaina Civic Center having watched Arizona trounce Kentucky the night before and run through the NCAA tournament just 8 months earlier. But their coach had seen the same games and noticed something that his players hadn't.
We're in the locker room thinking Arizona's a really good team. Coach K walks in smiling, more confident than anyone. We can beat this team. All we have to do is this, and this.
When the Blue Devils saw an opening, they took their shot, hitting 3 three-pointers in the first minute 37 seconds. And on the defensive end, the Devils forced 7 turnovers in the first 10 minutes, putting the brakes on the quickest cat, Bibby. The Devils made the first move. McLeod made the second. He caught fire, scoring 10 points in the next 10 minutes as the Devils increased their lead to 51-34 at the half. When Duke headed to the locker room, their confidence was restored, and Bibby still hadn't scored a single point.
He caught him off guard because Bibby didn't know. It's hard to understand who Steve is and what he's capable of doing.
A couple dives he made on the court where after he made them, you know, if you're playing against him, like, who are these guys? You know, where do these guys come from? Like, they really want to, this guy really wants to win.
The second half didn't get any better for Bibby, who picked up his 4th foul with 13 minutes left, just seconds after scoring his first point. Wojo was making Bibby a non-factor, but he wasn't doing it alone.
You know, you have to give a lot of credit to the guys around me because, you know, when you drive the lane and there's Shane Battier or Elton Brand in there, you know, it's not very easy to score. So those guys deserve as much credit as I do, and I'm not stupid enough to act like it was all me.
Even when Wojo was out, Bibby had nothing on William Avery. Avery had come to Duke expecting to challenge Wojo for playing time, but the 2 point guards didn't make their rivalry a personal battle. They worked together, with Wojo teaching Avery instead of trying to humiliate him.
I had prepared for Wojo, like, during the summer, you know, watching him play. I was like, hey, I can't go out there and let this guy, like, embarrass me. Wojo, he does a real good job of, like, shuffling his feet, you know, and he got this little trick where he kick your foot and you trip, you know, and he never call it a foul and you lose the ball.
On this night, Wojo ran the show while Avery, taking advantage of his open looks, came off the bench to score 21 points in 20 minutes. Arizona turned up the pressure at the end to make one final charge, but Duke held on for a 95-87 victory. Wojo was the tournament's MVP. Avery had shown what he could do, and Brand made the all-tournament team along with McLeod.
You know, it was just one of those games, and I'm hoping to have a lot more games like tonight.
So are we.
Play, baby.
shots, dog.
The Blue Devils were on top of the world.
There you go.
But the relaxation wouldn't last forever. Within days, the Devils were back on the court, 5,000 miles from paradise, facing South Carolina State. The Cameron faithful welcomed back the nation's new #1 team for the first time since 1992, but the Blue Devils were all business. Duke kept the pressure on from buzzer to buzzer, forcing 33 turnovers and gave the Bulldogs star guard, Roderick "Moo Blakeney, one of the worst nights of his career, showing that no matter the opponent, they would come ready for war.
I thought we played good basketball throughout, no matter what lineups, even with guys in there the last few minutes of the game.
One of those guys was walk-on junior Jay Heaps, an All-American midfielder on Duke's soccer team. He was making his debut with the 97-98 basketball team. Heaps had a warm place in the hearts of Duke students who remembered his freshman basketball season when in 1 minute of action against UNC, he made 3 assists and stood up to Carolina's cocky point guard, Jeff McGinnis. Heaps knew that he would rarely play during the basketball season, but brought a gung-ho spirit that endeared him to coaches and teammates.
Jay and I are great friends. He's a great guy, and he's always got a smile on his face, and he always seems to be upbeat and positive, and beyond that, he's an unbelievable competitor, and he brings that to our team.
Heaps showed his rustiness against South Carolina State, but he would have the chance to work on his game in Duke's next contest, another blowout against UNC Greensboro. The Devils looked unstoppable, but ACC opponents, like Duke's next foe, Virginia, would be another story.
I didn't feel like I was in college basketball until the ACC started. And that's when the real wars came.
UVA center Norman Nolan and guard Curtis Staples were a force to be dealt with, and 1 minute in, they showed why. But on this day, easy baskets would be few and far between for the Cavaliers. Duke put on a defensive clinic, forcing 22 turnovers in the first half alone.
Very good basketball team.
Duke's 3 wins this week have been by an average of 53 points. In the week ahead, they play Villanova and Michigan.
Duke's recent play made Villanova look like it would be a lamb to the slaughter. The Blue Devils jumped out in a hurry, taking a 26-point lead into the half. As an added bonus, Chris Carawell scored 13 points in his first game back and showed no signs of back trouble.
We had not practiced well the last couple of days. Our first 2 not real good days of practice, and I think so much of it had to do with the week we're in academically. Like Avery had his final in philosophy today.
Avery may have been thinking about exams, but he couldn't wait to play Villanova and his high school teammate, Jermaine Medley.
Yeah, we talk about it, it was mainly for bragging rights, and I stole the ball from him a couple times, things like that. But I didn't shoot the ball very well.
While academic worries hurt Avery's game, fellow freshman Chris Burgess used basketball as an escape from the classroom.
I remember at the end of the semester, because I had to finish off strong there, in my dorm room, like 2 in the morning sometimes, making sure I was doing my work and making sure I was, finishing my project and my essay.
But Burgess had flourished over the last 4 games, averaging 11 points and 5 rebounds. Finals is always an uncomfortable time of year for Duke basketball players, and this trip carried added pressure for 2 of the Devils, Mike Chappell and Shane Battier. UM fans didn't like getting snubbed by local recruits, especially one as highly touted as Battier, so they welcomed him back to Chrysler Arena. When game time came, the Blue Devils seemed in control. But it wasn't the blowout Duke fans had come to expect. Michigan was strong inside and able to exploit Duke's young and inexperienced front court. A Nate James three-point play keyed the Blue Devil run, and they went to the locker room up 46-35. Duke increased the lead to 16 early in the second half, but with Wolverine football player Charles Woodson in New York accepting the Heisman Trophy, the Maize and Blue Hoopsters made headlines of their own.
Shot clock's at 9. Bullock will take a standing three. Good. High screen by the big guy Trader, and Bullock nails a three. Now the pass out comes to Bullock. He'll turn and take a three, and again he scores. In the paint, pitched out, ball knocked away. Bullock picks it up, knocked away from him. He gets it back, goes down for the lay-in. Good. Bullock.
After getting run over in Ann Arbor, the Blue Devils were at a crossroads.
I felt we had to call a team meeting because, well, Wojo and I said, you know, it seems like we're taking things for granted. And at this time of the year, I mean, we saw how easily a 9-2 team went to nothing a couple years past, and we were 9-1.
After a week off for finals, the Devils returned to Cameron for an easy matchup with Mercer. Most Duke students had gone home for winter break, and just hours after the game, the players would do the same. But there was something more to the Mercer game. Senior forward Ricky Price, a high-flying Cameron favorite, would play for the first time since his academic suspension. Price had come to Duke with as much promise as any Blue Devil recruit and had won comparisons to Grant Hill, who left Durham right as Price was arriving. But unlike Hill, Price wasn't the typical Duke kid.
I liked Duke, but I wasn't a Duke fan. You know, my favorite team coming up was I remember being Georgetown and Arizona. Those are my favorite teams, UNLV. And, you know, not that I want to go to those schools, but I kind of saw myself at a place like Georgetown and Arizona for some reason.
His style of play didn't befit the stereotypical Blue Devil, and neither did his work habits on or off the court. As a freshman, he was at times brilliant, but often inconsistent, a problem exacerbated by Krzyzewski's absence.
It was really tough because in high school, you know, I played for so many different coaches. You know, I had like 6 coaches in 4 years. And then I get to Duke and looking for stability, and coaches going after the first 11 games.
That stability seemed to arrive in his sophomore year when, with his coach back, Price averaged 14 points and became his team's go-to guy down the stretch. He made third-team All-ACC and looked like the next in a long line of Blue Devil stars.
People really expected a lot from me as a junior. And I think my approach that summer, I don't think I approached it right.
A broken finger got his season off to a slow start. When he returned, he was just another player off the bench. And basketball wasn't his greatest source of problems. Toward the end of his junior year, he was convicted of academic dishonesty for allegedly plagiarizing on a term paper. He was suspended by the university, forced to miss the summer session, and sit out the fall semester.
That summer, when it came out in the papers and the media got a hold of it, you know, it really got big. And, you know, of course, when Duke has a casualty in any kind of nature, you know, it becomes a big thing in the community, in the city, and because it's Duke nationwide. And it was a hard pill to swallow. You know, it was tough holding my head up each and every day to the grocery store, to the car wash, to the gas station, to the bank. You know, everyday errands that I had to run, I had to see someone, you know, who would ask me, what's going on? What happened? You know, what are you going to do? Are you going to transfer? Are you going to leave? What's the deal?
If the suspension would teach him anything, it was not to take the easy way out.
My father always taught me that you have to be accepting of your responsibilities and hold your head high and be responsible. And it's not the mistake that you do, it's what you do with the mistake.
Instead of running away from his problem, Price looked to improve himself and, for a change, to help someone else. If anyone could tell kids to stay in school and mean it, it was Ricky Price.
Them seeing me, you know, fall flat on my face and be able to get up and be responsible and make things happen that are positive was great for them to see. Because if I can do it, they can do it.
Now, after watching Duke reach #1 without him, Price would finally get his chance on the court.
The last couple of days I haven't been that excited, but today when I walked in the locker room and put my jersey on, I'm like, I'm back. I'm on the team. Nothing has changed. Everything is back to normal. I'm gonna have a good Christmas.
The real story of the Mercer game, though, is Roshown.
McLeod, coming off a Michigan game in which he had no rebounds and made just 1 of 5 shots, got his second start of the year against Mercer.
He started it, played 4 minutes, and was as bad as a player could be at Duke University and be a good player. And then I didn't play him again that game until the last few minutes when I put in all the walk-ons. And we were up 40 or 50 points. And really, to embarrass him, because he had embarrassed himself earlier in the game.
I think it was a wake-up call game for me, and Coach is a good coach, and he knows his players well.
That wake-up call continued during the car ride to the airport when McLeod sat with Elton Brand.
And Elton was just like, don't worry about it, just, we need you, we need you, and when you get in the game, just, be yourself. And I was just like, at the time I didn't want to hear it, because I was so frustrated, and my cousin was like, he's right, and everything will be better if you just make it happen.
So instead of lounging around, McLeod returned to a familiar spot.
I worked on my skills. I shot the ball every day. I ran every day, and I practiced with my old high school. I kind of went back to my little roots. It was sort of like a Rocky thing. I kept envisioning Rocky.
While McLeod was training, his coach was busy planning.
Roshown was on my mind, but Elton was really coming on. Like I was so we didn't know Elton would be as good as he was that early, and during those 5 days, I really spent most of it figuring out how to use Elton more.
Duke will run the rest of the season without Elton Brand, the team's top scorer and rebounder. He broke a bone in his left foot during practice on Saturday. Surgery is planned later this week for the freshman forward. The team remains #2 behind North Carolina in this week's ESPN USA Today coaches poll.
It's amazingly ironic that he got hurt right away. I mean, it was a huge blow, because we had just started changing to take advantage of who he was, even to the extent of telling our players, like, hey, he's the main guy. Okay, and then a couple days later, we don't have him. It's difficult then to go to someone else and say, well, you're the main guy now.
In the first game after Brand's injury, Chris Burgess started at center and scored a game-high 14 points in the 89-39 win over Portland State, but he wasn't the freshman who was wowing the Duke coaches. Shane Battier, one of the best students on the team, had struggled in mid-December under the pressure of final exams.
I really got stressed out about finals. I really didn't know how to handle myself, how to prepare myself, and as a result, my on-the-court performance suffered.
Battier's struggles were never more apparent than on the trip to Michigan, where fans taunted him and he attempted only 1 shot in Duke's loss.
And Coach told me, just go home, don't even pick up a basketball, just clear your mind and come back and you'll be good.
Battier came back to Durham refreshed, and the winter lifestyle, free of distractions, helped him focus again.
Right now, we're playing like we're in the NBA, where all we have to worry about is basketball.
Battier and the Devils would need extra intensity for their next game, the always tough trip to Maryland. The Terps had already beaten Kansas and would be dying to feast on the Devils, who were missing not only Brand, but also D.C. native Nate James, who had played sparingly since the Davidson game. He set out the Mercer game to keep the option of a medical red shirt open. And over Christmas break, he made his decision.
I talked to my family and everyone, and they were like, that was the best decision, was to just red shirt, not play anymore. and I was fine with it because I didn't want to waste another year like I did last year.
With the injuries came questions. The Blue Devils were still talented, but were they a national championship contender?
There was a lot of speculation with Elton going out that this was the one game that they were going to, you know, Maryland was really going to give it to us.
If history was an indicator, this game wouldn't be decided until the very end. In each of the previous 3 years, Duke at Maryland had come down to a last-second shot with the ball in a Duke player's hands. Only once did the Devils win.
Maryland's always been, you know, a fun place to play. The fans there are second to none when it comes to vulgarity, and so guys are always prepared for, you know, for a hard-fought battle.
But on this night, the Devils shut the hecklers up. The Duke lead was 12-3 less than 90 seconds in. Then McLeod got hot, and no gimmicks could get the fans or the Terrapins back in the game. McLeod scored 14 first-half points, and the Devils had a 61-39 lead. Even more surprising was the contribution of Shane Battier.
Coaches had been getting on me about being more aggressive, looking to shoot more. And I came off the bench, and the first time I touched the ball, I put it up. I got blocked to half court, but that didn't deter me. I got it back on that same possession, got fouled, hit 2 free throws. And then I just made strong, aggressive moves.
Battier finished with a team-leading 18 points and 8 rebounds as the Devils continued the onslaught. There would be no last-second heroics from Ricky Price, who saw only 7 minutes of action, most at the game's end.
We just completely dominated them, every facet of the game. And it was great to go up there and do that in front of the fans and to shut all those fans up who'd given me so much trouble for 4 years. See them leaving the gym early was special.
They didn't expect to go out and do that, but they were shooting the ball so well. I mean, they were moving around, everything was going in. But it was like, it was a surprise. And, you know, we wanted them to feel like, no, it wasn't a surprise. It's happening because you're doing all the right things. And I think that's still a teaching process.
Back in Durham, Brand was taking up plenty of space behind the Duke bench. But he didn't have to sit there alone. Upon hearing of Elton's injury, his mother in Peekskill, New York, jumped in her car and rushed to Durham.
Drove down at night by herself, you know, from New York. That's about 9 hours during the day. You know, so that's what type of mom I have. You know, she was there just the next morning.
The rest of the Blue Devils couldn't worry about Brand because they had NC State on their mind. Though Duke had won its first 2 ACC games by an average of 38 points, the rest of the road wouldn't be so easy, as an undersized Wolfpack proved. Fighting the scrappy pack and the brutal heat inside Cameron, the Devils never got untracked on offense. But their defense, led by Chris Carawell and Mike Chappell, kept them afloat. The 2 sophomores combined for 27 points and held State star CeCe Harrison to 7 points in a 64-50 win. Carawell and Chappell had been just as unbending at Maryland, where they forced the usually explosive LaRon Profit to an 0 for 7 shooting performance and made talented Terp freshman Terrence Morris look just plain bad. Defensive stopper was just the latest role for Carawell, Duke's Mr. Versatility. He had played center the previous year and had since switched from starter to reserve. His ball handling looked funny, opponents didn't think he could shoot, and he seemed too short to play in the post. But Carawell always played tough.
I got an old school game, you know, get the job done, anything to get the job done. Like I said, keep it simple. That's my game.
While Carawell was stepping up on the court, his close friend Nate James was on the bench, defining a role of his own.
I'm the informer, you know. If I see something out there that the coaches might not see or something that can help my teammates, defensively, offensively, I know I tell the coach a little something, you know what I'm saying?
I want to get an answer, dog. I want to get an answer.
Hi, Rick. Since Nate's injury, what role has he taken for the team?
Well, right now, Nate, he has several responsibilities that he does. One is to look nice on the bench, and he does that. With stylish performance, he does that greatly. Another is to, give us love when we come to the bench. Sometimes we're tired, sometimes we don't see things that he sees out there, and it's important for him to give us that knowledge. And for my people in Cali, see when I get there.
Not all the people from Cali were in such high spirits. Chris Burgess, the Sporting News National High School Player of the Year one season earlier, was now relegated to the bench. All season long, his free throw percentage had hovered around 30%, and after starting 3 straight games, his play was so miserable that his coach, once enamored with Burgess's talent, started looking at him in a different light.
I remember Coach telling me in the locker room saying, I wasn't a good college basketball player, and that's when it's kind of like that's when adversity hit me, and I didn't, I hadn't really been there. I've never been called a bad player before, and that's when I was really down on myself, and actually, I wasn't real vocal at all. I was kind of not really social. I mean, all my friends, everyone at school, everyone was home. It was just kind of us, and things were just not good for me at all. I mean, it was real, kind of like a go. I didn't talk to my parents at all, and I just wanted to get away from things. At the time, I was real frustrated with everything. I mean, the thoughts were going through my mind. Am I at the right place? Am I doing the right things? Am I getting better?
Burgess had only one place to turn, to his roommate and fellow Californian J.D. Simpson, a freshman walk-on who rarely saw playing time, but proved his worth to Duke basketball in his dealings with Chris.
I put a sign in my door that says, to remind me when I walk out, I'm a great free throw shooter, so every time he gets a kick out of that. So whenever if I miss, he's like, Chris, you're a great free throw shooter.
Simpson had turned down scholarship offers in order to walk on at Duke, having introduced himself to the Blue Devil program in an unusual setting.
JD found me on the golf course. I was hitting golf balls, late spring, I think. And the kid just walks out there, what's up, coach? What are you doing? He just walked out there, we talked a little bit, said, hey, I want to do this, I want to do that.
Now Simpson was catching Burgess off guard, making the dejected center laugh and giving him helpful advice.
We're both goof-offs, we're kind of guys who just like to be friends with people and be social and to go out and, have fun. I mean, he has a little more fun than me, but...
Burgess's struggles freed up playing time for another forgotten Blue Devil, junior Taman Domzalski. But Domzalski would have to prove himself against one of the hottest teams in America, number 13, Florida State. This wasn't the first time Duke had met a rowdy student body, and they would not let themselves be intimidated.
What am I going to worry about Chief Osceola when I have to play Kerry Thompson? The guy is not even worth the dirt on my shoe.
With that attitude, the Blue Devils came out with a sharp focus. Like at Maryland, Roshown McLeod and Shane Battier got the offense clicking. And while this time the opponent wasn't overwhelmed, the Devils stayed in command throughout the first half. Florida State hadn't shown all of its cards, though, and on Randall Jackson's jumper, the Noles had a 12-5 second-half run and a declaration of war. But when the prospects looked dim, Duke went to its trump card, a 4 of hearts. McLeod scored 10 of Duke's next 13 points and 25 on the night as the Devils pulled away for a 75-63 win.
I couldn't let us lose tonight. That's what was going through my head.
Really happy for Roshown. I thought that's his best game at Duke.
The same could have been said for McLeod's performance at Maryland, when he poured in 17 points in 22 minutes. Since his Mercer nightmare, McLeod had become a new player.
In the preseason scrimmages, he was just getting killed by everybody. Couldn't do anything. I was blocking a shot and just totally dominating him. And in conditioning, he was always the last one to finish up, and he was just, everyone was like, come on, Ro, and he was, ugh.
But McLeod started listening to the people who had been there before.
I always told Ro in practice, hey, you can do more, you got to push yourself, you got to push yourself. And when he decided that that was it, that he was going to push himself and he was going to go forward, that's when things really turned around. He came back from the Christmas break and he said, Coach, I'm ready to work. Whatever it takes, I'm going to get it done. No excuses. Let's get it done.
You could tell when he sacrificed and he came in ready to go. And that day is when Elton broke his foot, but that's the same day he was already a different Roshown McLeod.
They were the two that was there for me to let me know that, well, you know, I can do it, you know. And once I started to believe in that, that's when that stare came.
Perhaps the most important factor in McLeod's turnaround was its timing. While McLeod got hot, Trajan Langdon, Duke's leading scorer, was following a 1-for-10 shooting night against NC State with a 2-for-8 performance at FSU. Langdon would find his groove 4 nights later at Wake Forest, as would nearly all of his teammates. Duke had lost 5 of its previous 7 games at Wake, but this year, the Blue Devils' stifling defense made it a 20-4 game in no time. And for the 4th straight game, an important part of that defense was Trajan Langdon. In the fall of '95, Duke needed a player to fill the void created by the graduation of Cherokee Parks and Eric Meek, and Trajan Langdon had the ideal credentials. He was the high school Scholar Athlete of the Year out of the New Mexico Military Institute, where he refined his disciplinary skills and became a McDonald's All-American. A thin roster his freshman year brought a need for him to play. His sophomore year, on a team in desperate need of size, the 6'10" Langdon played a grand total of 112 minutes as he grew out of favor with his coach. But he came in as a junior ready to right his ship.
Trajan was working extremely hard the first part of the season. He was hungry, he was competing, and in the time that I've known him, that's one of the first time I've seen him really have a love for the game. He had a passion to play, and he was working every day. Every day he'd call me, Coach, I want to work out. Coach, I need to do this. And he was there and he was working, and the opportunity came.
That opportunity first presented itself at Maryland, and Langdon took advantage. After Elton Brand went down to injury, it was Langdon, not the highly touted Chris Burgess, who stepped forward.
I'm most pleased for Trajan because he's hung in there and he's gotten better without anyone knowing it. You know, we knew it, but he's playing behind Elton and Chris.
In his 3rd year of maintaining a difficult pre-med course load in the classroom, Langdon was showing signs of a bright future on the basketball court.
I see Trajan Langdon having a lot of options as far as scholastically and basketball-wise.
It had been basketball only for 3 weeks, but with the 2nd semester approaching, the Devils would get back to the books.
Ready for class tomorrow?
Maybe after a 12-hour nap.
If the Blue Devils were distracted, they did a good job of hiding it when they came out to face Clemson. With #1 UNC having lost earlier in the week to Maryland, the Devils seemed eager to take over the top spot in the polls. Mike Chappelle put Duke up by 16 at the half, sending the Tigers and their coach to the brink of disaster. The Blue Devils felt no mercy. They kept pouring it on, building a 24-point lead. With just over 8 minutes left, they still led by 17. But the game was far from over.
Battier stays. Avery and Wojciechowski together. There's a step. Here comes Quin for the driving layup. They are alive in Clemson. Now 71-63.
After a Duke timeout, the Devils needed to make something happen, and Trajan Langdon came through with 3 points the old-fashioned way to push the Blue Devil lead back up to 11. But Clemson hadn't finished yet. With the Duke lead down to 1, the Blue Devils went to their go-to guy, Roshown McLeod, and Clemson came up big on defense. But this time, the Duke defense would respond.
81-80. Duke leading Clemson by a point. Tigers penetrating, losing the ball, not held ball. Duke on dominating possession.
With 10 seconds left in the game, Duke was in control. With 9 seconds left, their fate was back in Clemson's hands.
All right, Buckner will inbound it. He's got Witt, Iturbe, McIntyre, and Jamison lined up right about in front of him, right across the top of the circle. Larry Rose will hand the ball to Buckner, who will inbound it. Does so to McIntyre, who comes out to take it. 8 seconds, 7 seconds. Wojo knocks the ball free for the moment. He recovers, comes down in, pulls up for the jumper off the front of the rim. Rebound tip. Iturbe fires it up at the buzzer. No! Duke holds on to win it. 81-80. What a victory for the Blue Devils here.
We found someone that wore us down.
This game coming up Tuesday against A&T gives us a chance to get out of conference and, I guess work on some offense.
The nation's new #1 team sent a message, but another, less encouraging message became clear that night. Ricky Price didn't belong in Duke's rotation.
At first, I felt that that I probably might redshirt because of, the depth on the team and how far that I would be set back. But I had a great summer, basketball-wise, and a great fall, and I really improved as a player.
What Price didn't understand was the difference between the Duke teams of '95 and '96, when he started 43 times, and this team.
In Ricky's sophomore year, sometimes we only had 5 guys to start. It's a different circumstance.
Against North Carolina A&T, Price got his first significant playing time since the Mercer game and tried to do too much. He took 13 shots in 19 minutes and made only 3. This against one of the weakest opponents on Duke's schedule.
I think Rick wanted to come out and have a great game offensively, but he struggled because he was trying to, force things, instead of just playing, within the team concept, and I think that hurt him.
For comfort, Price turned away from the team and to his father, who earlier in the year had moved to North Carolina.
After a lot of games, I'd be upset and disappointed, that I didn't play as much as I wanted to, or things didn't go the way I wanted them to. And sometimes it's good to have somebody there, a shoulder to cry on, someone to talk to, someone to give you advice. And none other than your father, who's given me probably the best advice that I've had my whole career, and everything that I've done. And to have him there, was just a blessing, and it helped me get through each and every day.
While Price tried to find his place on the team, the rest of the Blue Devils wanted to keep the juggernaut going. They were overwhelming favorites when they went to Charlottesville for a contest with struggling Virginia. Barring a postseason meeting, this game gave ACC fans their last chance to watch the rivalry between 2 of the league's top shooting guards, Trajan Langdon and Curtis Staples. 4 years earlier, Langdon left Anchorage, Alaska with a reputation as one of the top 2 shooting guards in America. Staples was the other.
We played against each other in the McDonald's game, in a couple high school tournaments the summers before at Nike and stuff, and we knew that we were going to play each other in the ACC.
In their freshman year, their paths diverged. While Langdon endured a season of losing, Staples helped guide Virginia to the Elite Eight and sent Langdon to one of the most painful losses of his career. As their careers continued, their outlooks changed. Staples had a shot at becoming the NCAA's all-time leading three-point shooter, but his team treaded water around 500. Langdon, after missing his sophomore year with a knee injury, had come back with a vengeance. He started 1996-97 on a tear and kept it going until his team had the ACC regular season title. But on this day, Staples' Cavaliers went punch for punch with Langdon's top-ranked Blue Devils. The same team Duke had beaten by 44 a month and a half earlier now wanted revenge.
He was working me that game. He was running me off screens, getting open, hitting shots, and it was aggravating me. It was put it plain, it was pissing me off.
And with Norman Nolan getting it done inside, an upset seemed more possible by the minute. But with Duke ahead by 2 and 4 minutes left, Langdon took over.
I just had the rhythm, and so I said, whoa, if I come off something, give me the ball.
Those are big-time shots. He hadn't had a great game up to that point, but he stepped up when his team needed it the most.
Having barely squeaked by UVA the second time around, the Blue Devils had good reason to fear their next opponent, Maryland, which they had beaten by 32 at Cole Fieldhouse. Instead of fear, Duke came out with fire. While Duke was shooting, Maryland couldn't stop talking. The Terrapins were called for 4 technical fouls, including 2 on Coach Gary Williams, and helped the Devils build a big lead early en route to another blowout. In the team's first meeting, Shane Battier had 18 points to spark the Blue Devil offense. This time, he showed off his true specialty. In the first meeting, Chris Burgess was struggling. This time, he was flourishing.
I've been really working hard in practice, you know, with playing against Taman and Roshown, just trying to get better and better. Establishing myself that I want to be a part of this team. You know, I want to be a part of the team on the court as well as on the bench. And I came out today saying, you know, this is the game. I know I can do it. You know, my mom was here. It's her first game, flying up to California, and just came out there and got 3 quick offensive rebounds. And, you know, and the coach looked at me. He's like, yes. And the last free throw, you know, he looked at me and said, this is your best game all year. And it really made me feel good. Like I've been working, and I'm going to keep working, and it's paying off. And you look up the scoreboard, we're up by 20 or plus, and it's like, wow.
Duke's 29.5-point average margin of victory was unprecedented, 9 points better than the 1992 national champion Blue Devils. This year's team was undefeated at home, had forced 22.5 turnovers per game, had yet to trail at halftime, and had the second-best start in school history. With their entire team intact, that would have been an accomplishment. With Elton Brand out, it seemed more like a miracle. They were not the same team that had lost to Michigan in December. Since then, they had faced similar obstacles on the road. But in each case, a veteran had stepped up to the challenge. The Devils were just 1 week away from the showdown of showdowns when they would meet second-ranked UNC and find out just how far they had come.
No one allowed us to play any game before that. It was always, you know, we were about to play state, and they would say, well, next week you play Carolina. And we had another game before we played Carolina. We played Georgia Tech. Well, is Duke looking ahead to Carolina?
Some of the Blue Devils may have been looking ahead to UNC, but not Wojo, Langdon, or Battier.
Let's go 40 minutes. Hey, for 40 minutes, we're running it right up their ass. Hey, we were 8-0 in the first section. We're going 8-0 in the second section. Hey, it starts fucking today. Let's go. 1, 2, 3.
The trio threw themselves into every play, even with the outcome decided. Battier wore down Tech All-America Matt Harpring, and the Devils, despite a lackluster effort, won easily.
Battier's defense was, wow, he just such a good defender.
He should have went to Georgia Tech. That's how it is.
Now that the buzzer had sounded on the Georgia Tech game, the question about UNC started pouring in.
It's just another game for us, you know what I'm saying? We won't even play them twice, just like we do everybody else, you know.
Sick of questions about Thursday?
Yes, I am.
We will be ready for Thursday night.
Last question. Man, I'm looking forward to it. I know you are too, you know?
The Devils had the deepest team in America. Carolina had the best starting 5, and if the rankings weren't enough, the schools loved each other like the Hatfields loved the McCoys. In the week leading up to the game, the media couldn't get enough of Duke UNC.
Every local channel had something on the game, and you know, ESPN, any channel you hit for like 5 or 6 channels, something about the Duke game. And I was like, and I was sitting there with Steve, and Steve's like, I know, I can't even, you know what I mean? It was like one of those things where it was just so big that you couldn't even put on TV to get your mind off it. I mean, you know, for me, it didn't really affect me, but for Steve, sitting there with Steve, you could just see what kind of, you know, intense atmosphere it was, and not even being able to relax and, you know, watch TV was kind of like, all right, you know what I mean? Because 2 seconds later, you know, you'd be watching Tim Allen's Tool Time, and then all of a sudden a highlight comes on, a Duke-Carolina game coming up.
So it was an unbelievable atmosphere. It was almost like the Super Bowl. I mean, there's media crawling around at every hole in Cameron. You couldn't kind of get a word in to anyone in the city of Durham without talking about the game. It was a national championship caliber game.
Veterans like Wojo, Langdon, and Price had worked for 4 years to put Duke in a game like this, and the experience of their freshman year made it all the more sweet. They had seen college basketball's valleys, and now they would reach its peaks. But the lean years had another impact on the Blue Devils, one they would rather have done without.
No one on that team to that game had played in a game of that magnitude for Duke.
When the hype had finally ended and the game was underway, both teams looked tentative. They combined for only 6 points in the first 3 minutes, but it didn't take much longer for the Devils to heat up. Carolina fought back, and it was a dogfight for much of the first half. But after Langdon put Duke ahead 27-25, the Tar Heels began to pull away. Their strategy, feed Antoine Jamison, was simple, but Duke couldn't stop it. By halftime, Jamison had 23 points, and Carolina, shooting 68% from the field, was teaching Duke a thing or two about blowouts. Duke needed a serious jump start in the second half, but missed 13 of its first 18 shots. As the 10-minute mark approached, Jamison scored his 30th point, and UNC led by 19. Just then, the Duke defense picked up. The offense wasn't clicking, but a pair of Chris Carawell three-pointers cut the deficit to 10. At the 6:01 mark, the Devils got some help. Maktar Jai's 5th foul and ensuing technical gave Duke 4 free throws and the ball. When Trajan Langdon scored off a drive, the UNC lead was 4, and the game was up for grabs. Instead of going the predictable route, Carolina hearkened back to what had worked a year before. Just as Ed Cota had broken down Wojo in UNC's 97 victory in Chapel Hill, Cota challenged Wojo to stick with him again. For the second straight year, Cota won the battle. In no time at all, the Carolina lead was back to 11. And they continued to look for more. They didn't just want to beat Duke, they wanted to embarrass them. Finishing the game with a 24-4 run, they seemed to have done just that.
I remember leaving the Carolina gym like, I can't believe this. It was the worst experience of my life.
Throwing the ball off the backboard, you know, it's like embarrassing, you know, jumping all over the place after the game, and we remember that. That's stuck in the back of our head.
Chris Carawell had scored 19 points and stayed aggressive throughout the game. Others didn't come ready to play. Johnny Dawkins saw one of the problems and gave the team a word of advice. Never make the game bigger than us. Only 2 days lay between the Chapel Hill debacle and Duke's next game, a battle at NC State. Krzyzewski made a statement with his starting lineup, going not only with his best defensive group, but with the group that he thought played the toughest, most aggressive basketball. Battier and Carawell were in, Mike Chappelle, Taman Domzowski out. And for the first time, who started really mattered. Off the bench, only Chappelle and William Avery saw double-figure minutes. But it took only one Blue Devil to get Duke back on track. Midway through the first half, McLeod had 4 points, and Duke led 21-16. By halftime, Duke had 10 more points, all courtesy of McLeod, and a 9-point advantage. It was obvious who State needed to stop, but there was no stopping McLeod, who scored the first 6 points for Duke in the second half. And by the time the senior was finished, he had 27 points and 10 rebounds, and the Blue Devils had won 65-49.
It was a tough ball game. Tough to get points, except for Roshown.
After letting Carolina shoot 63% from the field, the revamped Blue Devils held NC State under 37%. And Battier, starting again inside, blocked 3 shots and took away 7 rebounds. A tolling 4-day stretch was behind them, but the Devils couldn't rest. 50 hours later, they were due back on national TV, hosting talented Florida State.
I knew we were all pretty tired. So we were just going through the monotony of getting ready before a game, you know, and so I decided to do something to shake it up a little bit.
The African war dance would have seemed like to me.
I don't know what got in the shade of that game.
I just let my body convulse and just go crazy. And everyone just stopped getting dressed and sort of looked at me and started laughing.
It was fun. I think it gave everybody a lift.
The Cameron Crazies were the one dancing once the game started as Duke got hot in a hurry. 5 Blue Devils scored in double figures, but the one who drew the Crazies' attention was the one who had started the party in the first place. Trajan Langdon got a bit of attention, too, by doing something he had never done in a college game.
I don't know what to say about the dunk. Will gave me a great pass, kind of led me, and I looked behind and saw a big 7'3" Shabazz. And, you know, I think if he wasn't there, I wouldn't have dunked, but I thought maybe if I laid it up, he might have came and got it, knowing how tall he was, and I just wanted to make sure that didn't happen.
While the modest shooting guard downplayed his feat, his teammates couldn't hold back their excitement.
I saw him in practice a couple times, like when he was messing around, but you know, to see him go off like Jordan, you know, that's definitely gonna make the Sports Center highlights. You know what I'm saying? I'm looking forward to that.
The last time Langdon had dunked in a game was the 1994 Alaska State Championship game. That one drew more of a reaction.
The only time I heard Coach respond to any play or anything was when Trajan dunked. It was like the first time I heard him go, wow. And it was like that was the only time he's ever really reacted to any time anybody's done a good play or anything like that. And that was definitely amazing.
Although the Carolina loss had brought them down, the Devils had emerged from their 3 games in 6 days stretch a stronger team. Now with 4 days until the next game and no traveling to do, they got a chance to relax. For Shane Battier and William Avery, that meant spending more time at home with their third roommate, Elton Brand.
We lived in a 1-room triple, and it was a pretty large room, but it's not large enough.
He wasn't used to the same things we were used to. You know, we were used to the loud music, the staying up late, you know, talking on the phone, having company over. You know, Shane was more, sometimes I want to be to myself, you know, I'd rather load classical music and people out of the room by like 11 o'clock at night.
I know I was getting mad because I wanted to go bed early, and they always wanted to stay up and play PlayStation. And so finally I learned how to sleep with the lights on and the music blaring, and I think they learned how to actually close the door without slamming it.
The season got us closer because we were always together and on the road.
We always had those nights where, you know, we'd stay up late and just talk about the season, talk about who's playing well, you know, what the others doing well, whether it's Elton scoring more and he needs to touch the ball more, if it's Will, he needs more playing time, or he needs this or that, or we're always behind each other. When
it came time to return to the court, Duke picked up where it had left off. The Blue Devils overpowered Wake Forest with defense, taking a 41-20 halftime lead and never looking back. Trajan Langdon hit his first three just seconds into the game and led the team in scoring for the second game in a row. This was particularly rewarding because his father was watching him in person. Steve Langdon, a professor of cultural anthropology at Alaska Anchorage, spent the spring semester working at Duke. And after watching most of his son's collegiate career in front of a television set, he was back in the stands for every game.
A lot of people asked me, was I homesick freshman year? And I wasn't homesick at all. I was ready to get away from just the home atmosphere of everybody being focused on me and what I did, especially whether it was on the baseball field or on the basketball court. I had a lot of tension, and I just wanted to come down to a place where I really wasn't that well known, and I could just go out and play without there being that. There's still going to be the focus from your teammates and from your coaches and from some media, but to me the ultimate focus was my father. And that's what made me the most tense in high school. I remember games where we could be up 30 points and I could be on the floor and I miss a shot or I make a good move or maybe turn the ball over and I hear him yelling from the stands, you know, kind of cussing at me. But it's just the way he is. He just wanted me to succeed.
That success began with a free throw contest called the Elks Hoop Shoot that Trajan entered at age 9.
Every day after school I'd go into the gym and probably shoot about 200 free throws with my father. And he'd really kind of regiment it, you know, shoot 10, you know, step off, then shoot 15 just like they did in the competition. And he really pushed me. And I think that's what made me better because he made me disciplined. We'd go every day, shoot this many at least. You know, we'd never leave before I did that. And it got me to the point where by the last year of the competition, I was 3rd in the nation. At times when I was younger, I felt he was going too far. Because there'd be some times when I said, you know, maybe I didn't want to go to the gym. Maybe we'd gone 10 straight days and I was like, I wanted a day off, and he'd say, no, let's go. And basically I would just give in and say, okay, this must be the best thing for me. And that's one thing that I prided myself on, is trying to get to the gym before people and being the last one out of the gym growing up. And I think that's one thing I did, and that's one thing that helped me get here today.
Langdon, along with Roshown McLeod, was filling the scoring void that had opened up with Elton Brand's injury. Either Langdon or McLeod had led the Blue Devils in scoring for 9 consecutive games, and neither one had failed to reach double figures in more than a month. The Devils would need their senior leadership February 18th as they ventured to one of the ACC's Lions' dens, Littlejohn Coliseum at Clemson.
Clemson is, you know, one of the toughest places to play in America. You have a whole bunch of, of Clemson fans right on the court, screaming, you know, everything at you.
The buzz in the Duke locker room was about another Devil. Elton Brand's rehabilitation was ahead of schedule. So much so that the freshman center, expected to miss the rest of the season, was preparing to come back for Duke's next game against UCLA. But first, Duke had to get past the Tigers. Who were on a tear, having just annihilated Florida State and Tallahassee. The Tigers and their fans kept up the intensity early on in the game, but then Roshown McLeod put on a show for his biggest fans, his cousins.
Cloud fans right here. Cloud fans. Do it to him, bro. Do it to him. Do it to him, baby. Oh, yeah, bro. Yeah, bro. Take him, bro. Take him, bro. Take him, bro. Take him, bro.
A three by Steve Wojciechowski gave Duke a 15-point lead early in the second half, but the Tigers came back.
Ain't come on no flat guy either.
They answered with a 21-10 run that brought them within 4 with 6 minutes to play. Since the 13-minute mark, when McLeod picked up his 3rd and 4th fouls, Duke had depended on Trajan Langdon for all 9 of its points. With 5:27 left and Duke ahead 59-51, McLeod committed number 5. Clemson quickly pulled within 3, and the Devils went to the only weapon they had left. But that didn't finish Clemson. Greg Buckner's three-point play made it a one-point game, and Coach K tried another timeout. This time, the three-pointer didn't fall. 2 Terrell McIntyre free throws gave Clemson the lead, but Chris Carawell got the ball back and went straight for the hoop. The Blue Devils needed a stop.
I was mad at myself. Just a couple plays earlier, I let Jameson have an easy layup, and that was just poor defense on my part. So once he got the ball in that position again, I said to myself, he's not going to score. And once he got so low, I know he was going to his bread and butter, the jump hook. And he turned in the middle, exposed himself a little bit more than I think he'd like, and went up and got it. And, no science to it, just went up and got it.
With the outcome still in limbo, Duke looked to number 21 for one more bit of magic. Chris Carawell's free throws iced a 70-66 victory, and with Brand coming back for Sunday's showdown with UCLA, the Devils were ecstatic.
Just like I said, that was a great win, and Shane Battier is my idol.
Hundreds of Duke students had been camped out since January in tents near Cameron, waiting the Duke-UNC rematch. With that game 6 days away, the weather improving, and another ranked opponent coming to town, the residents of Krzyzewskiville came primed and ready. The Bruins were a formidable opponent with 5 pro prospects in their lineup. They had been troubled all year, though, and center Jelani McCoy, who was suspended early in the year, reportedly for smoking marijuana, had quit the team 1 week before the Duke game. The big game atmosphere, the Bruins' problems, and a visit by recruit Brett Nelson spelled a wild day for the Cameron Crazies and trouble for UCLA. Hidden in all the excitement was an emotional day for the Blue Devil veterans, as freshmen Wojo, Langdon, Price, and Singleton had endured the greatest humiliation of their careers, a nationally televised 100-77 beating at UCLA's Pauley Pavilion.
It was embarrassing, and it was a letdown. And it was kind of a climax to the bad year that we've had, and like some of the guys said, all we wanted to do is see that the time go down to 0, get off the court, shower, get dressed, and get on the plane to get back to Durham.
On this day, Langdon would make the Bruins taste the pain. Before UCLA could even blink, the fourth-year junior had 10 points, and Duke led 18-8. UCLA's misery had hardly even begun. Bruin frustration and the Blue Devil shooting put Duke ahead 57-33 at the half. Trajan Langdon had 21 points, and UCLA still had 20 more minutes to endure.
I remember back when they really embarrassed us, and they rubbed it in back freshman year. They did a lot of showboating and talking on the floor and celebrating, but that's one thing we don't do. We pride ourselves in not doing that. You go out, you take care of business, and win in the Duke way, not celebrate and not showboat or anything. Just go out there, win soundly, and walk off the court like we expected to win.
Next day, it was back to the classroom for the Devils.
My name is Todd Singleton. I'm a senior at Duke University, where I play basketball, and I major in electrical and computer engineering. Does anyone know what that is? Okay. What do you think?
It's kind of like designing things so you can build them.
Very good. Very good. This is my friend Roshown McLeod.
So if you don't work hard in the classroom as well, then you won't get the job done, and the A's and B's won't pile up. So we want to keep the A's and B's on top and keep the F's.
Okay,
I'm sorry.
Straight A's?
Straight A's then. I like that.
That's better.
That's better.
We both play basketball for Duke University. And the one thing, Duke University.
Carolina beat you.
Okay, we remember.
We don't want to talk so fast.
That's okay though. That's okay though. Because we
forgot how to play one time.
It's okay. Carolina did beat us, and they beat us pretty bad. But we both went out there and we both played hard, and we prepared. And they played a little harder than us, and they played a little smarter than us, and they prepared a little better than us. So we played them again Saturday.
The next night, another number 15 was the center of attention. But it wasn't long before Duke had retired Tech's hopes for an upset. The senior forward with 15 points was Roshown McLeod. The one shooting 2 for 10 from the field was Harpering. Things didn't change in the second half. With family in the stands, Augusta native Will Avery had 11 points, and Duke rolled to a 76-53 win. The Devils had clinched a tie for the ACC regular season title. With one big game left, they wanted more. For 3 months, 1,500 Duke students had camped out for the Carolina game, the final game of the season. As they began their last night of the adventure, the Duke players came out to show their appreciation.
Who's your daddy?
Thanks, y'all.
I love that.
Are you allowed to have a beer?
No.
He's not allowed to drink anything. He's got a big game tomorrow.
Then Coach K stopped by to talk to the Krzyzewskiville residents in what had become an annual event.
What the hell are you doing here? I mean, don't you have class or something? I really have always considered the students part of our team. You don't like Carolina, and I don't like Carolina. And there's no greater honor for me than to have the tents named Krzyzewskiville. I love it.
After 4 years of watching from the end of the bench, Todd Singleton finally got his moment in the sun.
He wanted to be out there, and every time he put on his uniform, nobody had a bigger glow than he did.
But that glow became much dimmer when he found out that he wouldn't get to start his last game in Cameron.
I know my mother was really hurt by the fact I wasn't starting. She took it personally. And that really pissed me off that my mother was hurt, you know? But at that moment, you know, I'm walking out there and then the crowd is into it and everything. I look at my mom and I point to her, and it was just like, so what? I'm not starting. Look at this. I mean, this is great. This is Cameron.
A senior from Jersey City, New Jersey, number 4, Roshown.
I remember when I got my first college letter from Duke. Coach didn't give it to me. He brought it to practice and opened it up himself and said, "This is unbelievable. Roshown McLeod received a letter from Duke." And everybody was like, wow, you know.
But Duke's last scholarship went to highly touted Joey Beard, who transferred from Duke at the same time McLeod was looking to leave St. John's.
No one knew that I was transferring. I just kept it a secret. I mean, I didn't want to go through the recruiting process again. Then I got a call from Coach K, and I thought it was a joke. And I said, you know, whoever this is, you know, I wish you'd stop playing. And they was just like, he was like, no, this really is Coach, it's Coach.
McLeod accepted Coach K's invitation to come to Duke, but that also meant leaving behind his son, Anthony Roshown, who had just been born.
I didn't get a chance to see my son do a lot of things like take his first steps and watch him get potty trained. And I would do anything to get him back. But, I mean, I know I can't. But I think the sacrifice that I made will better his life in the long run.
As Roshown was establishing himself as an NBA prospect, he always kept Anthony on his mind.
Every time I go to the free throw line, I tell him I love him. Now he's kind of older and he knows what's going on. So when he watches the games now, he knows what I'm saying. And he say it back to the TV.
The kid that came to Duke with NBA dreams was seeing himself come up short of where he wanted to be, and frustration was setting in.
I mean, there were some points during the season where I just couldn't make it. You know, coming to practice was a burden because I knew after the 2 hours was over, you know, I'd be one of the best players in practice, but in tomorrow's game, it wouldn't even show because I wouldn't play or I'd play sparingly.
But he learned not to show that on the court, as his support for his teammates never wavered.
Rick proved to be, I mean, in that way, an excellent friend to everyone because he wasn't thinking about Rick only. He was thinking about Duke, more so us, the guys on the team.
I'm extremely proud of Ricky Price and the growth that he had over this past season.
I see him now, and I'm like, that's a man right there.
I think he'll have a good career. I think he'll continue to work hard, and hopefully it'll pay off for Ricky, and he'll end up, you know, I think reaching his dreams.
Steve Wojciechowski had come to Duke as a McDonald's All-American, but that didn't explain his high school career. He had received very little interest from Division I schools until the summer before his senior year when he attended the ABCD camp in Detroit, Michigan.
And I played on a team with 9 Russians and myself, so everybody counted me as a foreigner also because of my name.
His team won a number of games, so Mike Bray and I felt that if he could lead them, he'd certainly, lead us well.
After 2 rocky years at Duke, Wojo had led Duke to 2 consecutive ACC regular season championships and endeared himself to his coach.
Well, I mean, I love Wojo. I mean, I have 3 daughters. I'd love Wojo, to join us. I'd shorten his name. I couldn't say that to about many guys.
What was supposed to be a dream game began like a nightmare. In fact, the Tar Heels couldn't believe how easy it was.
They thought this was going to be another blowout on our court.
My feeling is that here we go again. We're not playing with the maturity level that we need to and that we had, this month. And so I just asked them to be themselves.
With their momentum slowed, the Heels went to what they knew Duke couldn't stop.
We kind of, pinned that on our calendar as the game, because we were embarrassed the game before, and we said we'd do anything to win. And I didn't see that in the first half. In fact, we were awful. There was no way I was going to let us go out like that.
The three captains, we stepped up, and at halftime, and we said, well, if we're going to lose this game, we're going to have to die losing this game.
Duke came out strong, but wasn't gaining any ground in the second half, and Carolina eventually made a run. When Jamison scored his 20th point, the UNC advantage was 64-47 with 11:37 left.
I looked at him and he looked at me and he's like, it's time to go right now. And I said, let's go.
Once I got the ball and scored one time, I just wanted it again. Then I scored again, then I wanted it again, because, I just felt it. I saw it in their eyes.
wanted to make sure we got an opportunity to get 2 for 1. It was about 1:12 left on the clock, and I got the ball at the top of the key. I was going to pass it, but then I looked up and I was like, man, I might as well just go by him. I've been doing it all game.
Canada Duke has come all the way back to gain the lead for the first time in this ball game, 77-75. 50 seconds left in the ball game. Cover down inside. They double down. Roshown takes it away. Tie up. It is Duke all alone in any possessions with 45.7 seconds left. Carawell puts it on the floor. He will take the dribble jumper off the front of the rim, and Carolina rebounds with 16 seconds left. 8 seconds left. Tota backs way outside. Gets a run. A nice screen, and we got a blocking foul called on Trajan Langdon. Tota eyes the basket. He puts it up real high. It comes off. Tipped around, tipped around, tipped around. Oh, another foul is called by Steve Gordon on Elton Brand this time. They'll put Brendan Haywood on the line. 61% shooter, banks it off the back.
The feeling of emotion through the whole place just come down and just envelop us. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was just, you can't describe it. I mean, just everyone just rushed the court, and that's something you see in the movies.
It was kind of like everything came full circle. You know, I've been on a roller coaster ride. I've been on bad teams and mediocre teams, pretty good teams, and at that point, you know, all the emotions and everything that I've ever been through, especially with Coach K, because he was such a big part of my life, kind of hit me. And he was the guy I wanted to grab. I don't know why. You know, there's a million people I could have hugged at that moment, but immediately my thoughts went to him. And I think it just shows how special our relationship was and how much he meant to me.
After the game in the locker room, the coach really had nothing to say. I mean, what could you say? Words really couldn't do that scene, that game justice. And to go out after the game and hear the seniors give their speeches to the crowd and just going out there for the last time, that was a special moment.
Yeah, thank you for the 4 years you've given me. And we're champs. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dick Vitale of ESPN and ABC. Let me give you a little thumbnail sketch of what I think of the Duke Blue Devil basketball program. Well, number one, when the preseason started, if you looked at the Dick Vitale basketball yearbook, I'm proud to say that I had the Dukies rated #1 in America back in August. See, everybody jumped on a bandwagon after they seen them play because initially everybody said, oh, they're so young. They got so many freshmen, so many Souths. But I just knew they were talented. When we look at this Duke basketball team, we see a team so deep. In fact, I've often said that their second five could be top 25 in America. Think about that second five and how many guys would love to bring off the bench. People like Mike Chappelle, people like Chris Burgess and William Avery, and the list goes on and on. But the bottom line is you still have to count on the experience. Trajan Langdon, the Alaskan Assassin, can flat out shoot the three. Just ask the people at UCLA and Clemson, and I could go on and on. What about Roshown McLeod? What an unbelievable year he's had. He's become such a great scorer, inside and outside. And the heart and soul of the team certainly is the little guy, the old Rambo guy. He scraps, he claws, he hustles, Mr. Wojciechowski. So I could simply say, Duke basketball is awesome, baby, with a capital A.
The senior class had never made it past the first round of the ACC tournament. As freshmen, they won the play-in game as the 9th seed, but lost to #1 Wake Forest. As juniors, they were the #1 seed, but lost to #8 NC State. But that year, the team was tiring as the postseason approached.
Especially heading into the ACC tournament, we were really banged up. We had some guys that were hurt, and we didn't have the depth that we have this year.
This Blue Devil team went 11 deep, but as the tournament time approached, that number had become 7. Elton Brand's return had reduced Chris Burgess's role, and Taman Domzalski had re-aggravated a back injury that had kept him out of practice since the UCLA game. Mike Chappelle's minutes had gradually declined since the loss to UNC.
At that point, Mike, I think maybe mentally, really just kind of took a dip and just wasn't there. He wasn't himself, the guy who was playing the first half of the season.
We would come in and work with him and try to get his game, sharpen his skills, and just basically a lot of times with the repetitions that we're giving guys are just some kind of foundation where they can see shots going in.
Also there for Chappelle were the two guys who had always been at his side.
We help each other out a lot. When someone's down, we pick them up. When something's going wrong or something's right, we laugh together. We bicker together. Everything. We like brothers. It's going to be some good times. Going to be some bad times.
Despite the top seed in the ACC tournament, the Devils were weakened by an illness to Wojciechowski. The point guard played through it, but neither he nor Duke's offense had the usual sting.
That is the basic defense for the Blue Devils. Here's Nolan way out front, underneath, and Hand has the bucket. Cavaliers on the board first.
The same was true of Curtis Staples, who would finish his final collegiate game 3 of 13 from three-point range.
Nice job staying with them. That is a tough three-point shot.
The cold-shooting Devils were up 29-24 at the half, and though they pulled away for a 63-41 victory, they only made 38% of their shots. The shooting funk continued against Clemson, and the Tigers, hungry after 2 heartbreaking losses to Duke, built a 31-19 lead. And Avery's steal and dunk capped a 7-0 Blue Devil run and helped them pull within 5 at the half. The Blue Devils kept it going with 7 straight points to begin the second half and took a 35-33 lead. Clemson fought back and regained the lead, but Duke didn't relent, and the two teams stayed close the rest of the way. As the end neared and Duke's lead stood at 1, Wojo, silenced by the flu and by Terrell McIntyre for most of the day, hit a huge shot. But McIntyre wouldn't give up. His second 3, with seconds left, tied the game and made overtime a very real possibility. But the Blue Devils had one last chance.
Mike Wood gives him the basketball. He looks, he runs, he looks, he throws it over the top for William Avery. Avery jetting up the left side. 5 seconds left. Avery in the air. Shot won't go down. Avery gets it back up. And all around and in. William Avery with 3/10 of a second left. Duke is already on the floor, but they've got to get off the floor. This one's not over. Weidman at 6'11", and Battier fronts him. He batted back out of bounds. And the horn sounds. It's over. The Blue Devils will play the North Carolina Tar Heels for the championship tomorrow of the 45th Atlantic Coast Conference basketball tournament.
Fans from around the ACC had waited to see Duke and North Carolina in person. As in the first meeting, the early stages were even. And once again, Carolina pulled ahead late in the first half. But Duke wouldn't go down easily and trailed by only 4 at halftime. The Devils tied the score with less than 12 minutes remaining. They didn't score again for the next 7 minutes.
Jamison. Antoine Jamison with 18, and the Tar Heels lead it by 8-11.
But Duke's point guard still had some fight left. Roshown McLeod ended Duke's 7-minute scoring drought with a field goal inside and pulled Duke within 8 after Wojo stole the inbounds pass.
Big swing for Duke.
But Jamison and the Tar Heels proved once again to be too much for the Blue Devils. Carolina had the ACC championship and the inside track for the #1 seed in the East region. But the loss soon became the furthest thing from the Blue Devils' minds. Steve Wojciechowski was much more ill than he let on, and after the game he collapsed to the floor of the shower where he remained for over an hour. He took in 4.5 liters of fluid and was carried to the team bus in a wheelchair.
I know that made me feel bad, and that should have made the rest of the team feel bad because he was sick all that tournament. I mean, and he was going out there giving his all, and I felt that maybe we should have been collapsed on the floor. Why we're not down there on that floor?
The Blue Devils felt the sting of their loss that night when the NCAA brackets were announced. As expected, Duke received a #1 seed, but the sight of its first 2 games was far from ideal. The Devils had handed Lexington's favorites, the Kentucky Wildcats, their most bitter defeat ever in 1992. This year, Duke stood in UK's path to the Final Four.
We've already told our team as soon as they said, okay, it's a road game. And again, everyone said, well, you should beat Radford, and that's not, certainly we believe we should beat Radford. We'll have a tough game in the next one, but for 4 or 5 days, we're there, not necessarily enjoying the NCAA. Do you take your people out to restaurants or someone? Remember '92, and they shouldn't be. I don't think you should be put in that situation.
The Blue Devils adopted an us against the world attitude. It was easy to see why.
Everybody got booed. I mean, Joe Farr, the manager, got booed.
Whenever I rebound, I wear my goggles just so that my glasses don't break. I had to chase this one ball from over in press row. I jumped over the table, picked up the ball. I hear, yeah, goggle boy. Go at it, goggle boy.
Right now, the Blue Devils had Radford on their minds.
Yes, Radford is in Virginia.
What do you know about the team then?
They're a very good perimeter team. They shoot the 3 very well. Some athletic inside players, very experienced. Out of the Southern Conference, I think.
Tell me a little bit about this team you're going to play tonight.
Well, I'm trying to decide if I should cut my hair or not. I'm not sure. I've been, trying to, grow my fro out, pick it out a little bit.
How sure is it?
It's almost there. You know what I'm saying? It's almost there. I got my hairstylist over here, Steve, Wojo. How you doing?
If the league is not calling, I got a job in the entertainment business. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Selling tickets. Crazy, singing. You're gonna be on drums. Nate, you're gonna be on the guitar. You're gonna be like, I'll be there for you. Let y'all know where I'm from.
What you got ready?
What's son? Hey, Nate, give me a beat. You know what I'm saying?
Nate, hit him with a beat, dog.
All right. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
Sitting here watching this NCAA's. Get my Gatorade on. Gatorade is thirsty for that deep down body thirst. I wanna be like real.
The contest was a close one, not between Duke and Radford, but between McLeod and Radford. Of the other 32 Duke points, none came courtesy of Trajan Langdon. He attempted 4 shots in the first half and couldn't get any of them to fall. He came out in the second half and showed the same confidence that he had all year, but 3 more attempts didn't find the bottom of the net. He finally made it to the free throw line, where he was 88% on the season for 2 shots. But this was not to be Trajan Langdon's night. The entire Duke bench had made it into the game, and all had put points on the board. Only one Blue Devil failed to score in the 99-63 victory. And Langdon's shooting woes continued late into the night.
3 points total. Fucking Shaquille.
When he wanted to enter,
he never shot a 3 in his life.
How did let him enter
the NBA? He got 2. Shaquille about to get hot. Watch. Here he come. He gonna have a hot rack here.
Hey, me, bro.
I bet you won't beat C. Webb. This nigga be cheating. See how you be cheating like that? You getting lucky. Domino, what you got for me? And this ass whooping. You next? You next with these sticks?
But a 6-point possession helped put Duke up 45-38 at halftime. Duke's advantage reached double digits in the second half, and the game seemed well in hand, but the Cowboys weren't about to let their season end. It wasn't a pretty fight, but they had Duke against the ropes. The Devils went to their corner knowing that their season was on the line. When they returned to the floor, Langdon helped deliver the knockout punch.
What up? 616, baby. You know, we're going to St. Petersburg. We're going to do our job. You know, we're gonna get a tan. You know, we're gonna lay out with some honeys. You know, we're gonna chill out, and then we're gonna go to the Final Four, baby. Hey, you heard it right here.
Hey, Chris. Hey, how you doing, man?
Rob King, how you doing?
The teams that congregated in St. Petersburg looked like the usual suspects, as each had been to the championship game in the past 4 years, with UCLA winning it in '95 and Kentucky in 1996. Of the group, only Duke didn't have any players remaining from a Final Four team, so they turned to the most experienced members of their team, the coaches. Each of Duke's assistant coaches had been to the Final Four as members of an experienced team, something that the 97-98 Blue Devils couldn't claim to be. As a result, they lacked one intangible that the older Duke teams had.
86, 92, I mean, they just walked into a gym and they expected to win. This team really wanted to win and hoped to win. I don't know if they expected to win all the time, but they played to win all the time. And that's what was the same about them, but they haven't gone through some of the things the other teams had to create that swagger.
Leitner missed a foul shot against Arizona with no time on the clock. We'd been in those moments, or Ferry had been in that moment and could talk to Leitner. This year, there was no one except maybe Coach and us to an extent, really, that they had to draw confidence from him and from one another, so that when they're out there and they became disconnected at some point from one another, when shots weren't going or the other team hit a few quick ones, we separated a little bit. That was unfamiliar ground, and it was harder for us to get back together.
When Duke's regional semifinal matchup with Syracuse got underway, it was the veteran Devils that struggled the most. Mike Chappelle was finding his stroke as Duke built a 10-point halftime lead. Early in the second half, Syracuse made a 9-0 run to tie the game at 49.
Guys were kind of looking around at each other like, who's gonna get it done? And Coach called timeout, and he likened it. He referred to a specific point early in the season when it was tied up down at Florida State. He said, this is the time we find out if you're men.
The men who stepped up were 3 of Duke's youngest. By the 7:22 mark, room 115 of Duke's Bassett Dormitory had gone on an 11-0 run and guided the Blue Devils to the regional final.
When you have them 4 letters on your chest, everybody's coming at you, you know. That's what you want, you know. And games like this, to step it up, you know, that's what you come to do for.
I mean, they were so highly rated, they better have helped us. That's how I looked at it, you know. All the pub they got, they better did something, you know, and they speaking for it right now, you know. They really made some great plays, but they've been great all year long.
Only one opponent stood between the Devils and the Final Four. That opponent was Kentucky, the same team Duke had beaten 6 years earlier en route to its 2nd national title.
So Duke versus Kentucky.
What do you think of that, Ashley? Going to be a good game?
I'm so hungry for it. I'm so ready and fired up.
The Kentucky fans had been waiting for Duke since 1992, and now everyone was talking about the rematch.
Not unless Christian Laettner is going to play for us and Jamal Mashburn is going to play for them. Does that have any effect on our game tomorrow night? You know, I think we have 2 great basketball teams in our own right, and I think it's going to be an outstanding game.
But it would be hard to measure up to the greatest college basketball game ever. The 2 teams fought to a tie through regulation and needed overtime, and a miracle to decide the winner.
When Sean Woods hit that shot off the glass, the little runner in the lane, I thought the game was over. Kentucky was going nuts, and you know, it's amazing, you know, the way I look back at it, that Duke team, how calm they were. You know, they really didn't. They just went and they drew up the play, and it seemed like they knew they were going to hit the shot.
The thing I'll always remember about that game is Richie Farmer's face when the ball went in, because that's the kid I saw right in front of me. That, to me, helped me have a better understanding of the game.
I woke up, you know, dreaming, like, you know, me making plays. I try to imagine myself making plays in the game like that. You know, what if I had the last shot, how I would hit it? You know, would it be a three-pointer? Would it be a tip-in and stuff like that? So, I mean, games like that, you know, whether you're playing Carolina, Arizona, I mean, you envision yourself making great plays, and hopefully you can be the hero to make that play.
So the girls watch you on
So the girls can see, you know, you get more, it's all about the girls in that kind of situation.
Yeah. Tell me who's gonna win tonight? You can. 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 You can. You can. 1, 2, 3. Right from the start. Let's go. Yeah. Let's go. Yeah. Fucking happened to this game. This is your championship. Let's go. Get it, fellas. Let's get the road. Let's go. 1, 2, 3. Who that take go? He's gonna buy. Let's go. Let's go, well, man. Let's go. Let's go.
The entire state of Kentucky seemed to converge on Tropicana Field as the anticipated rematch finally arrived, and another trip to the Final Four was on the line. Duke played like it wanted that trip, jumping out to an 8-2 lead as the veterans took charge early. The Wildcats awakened, but the Duke defense stood in their way. The lead was won when the Devils erupted. A Battier jumper gave the Devils an 18-point lead with 7.5 minutes left. Tubby Smith called a timeout to search for answers. He found a few that worked. Duke's veteran point guard got the Devils back under control, and they went into the half with a double-digit lead.
Halftime, I can remember dreaming about cutting the nets down.
We had been playing great, and it was like everything clicked in that first half. And I'm thinking, let's pack our bags, let's go to San Antonio.
The trip to Texas drew closer and closer as the second half progressed, but just as their dreams seemed within reach, reality struck. A 14-1 Kentucky run in less than 3 minutes turned a blowout into a 4-point game.
None of my teams has ever been hit with the assault that Kentucky had for 4 straight exchanges. And I think our youth showed at that time, whereas an older team would have done something a little bit differently.
With the lead down to 1, a scramble for a loose ball forced McLeod to use Duke's last timeout.
We were looking to do things one-on-one rather than moving the ball like we had been doing to get the lead that we had.
The experienced Wildcats took advantage and took the lead.
Number 4, Roshown McLeod to the line.
McLeod stepped to the free throw line and calmly put Duke back in front. But with the score tied, Scott Padgett sunk the dagger into the Devils' heart. Duke was down by 2 with the ball and 4.5 seconds left, and something started to look familiar.
I was throwing the ball out of bounds, and I could run the baseline, and I was supposed to hit one of the streaking guards down the sidelines, and they were supposed to take the last shot. I looked deep, and both my options were pretty much closed, and so last second I saw Will.
And so I go get the ball, and I just try to, get it up the court as fast as I can, look for open people. Everybody was covered, and Jeff Shepard was playing great D, and they was like doing these fake traps, and I was able to put the ball behind my back. If I wouldn't have done that, I probably would have never even got off the shot. And I got off the best shot I could.
I saw it in the air, and I knew it was somewhat online. I saw that. I couldn't tell the trajectory, and so I was just waiting for a sound.
I just kind of stood there and looked at the clock and realized that the season was over. And I think walking up to the locker room, it kind of hit Wojo, Todd, and Rick, and Roshown that was it.
a little bit shocked, a little bit empty. It's just coming to it's an end right now. It doesn't even seem real right now. I mean, I haven't even realized that, I'm not going to play another college game again.
That game hurt a lot, just to look and see the seniors cry, and that's something I don't want to ever see again. I mean, you end the season laughing or crying, and I think, from now on we want to end our seasons laughing.
And now the people that we came here to honor tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, the players and coaches and managers of the 1998 regular season Atlantic Coast Conference champions, your 33-4 Duke University Blue Devils.
We decided that the best possible speakers that we could get and have speak to you, to our family here in Cameron, would be our graduating seniors.
When I first got to Duke, I was merely expecting to play intramural basketball. Well, let's be honest. I wanted to make this team. I grew to love the game again, like when you're 12 years old by yourself on the playground, shooting, working on your skills, by yourself, shot after shot, move after move. Can't go inside until you make one more shot, and then you have to make another one. Then it gets too dark for you to see the basket.
When I began to write this speech, my first line was, first, I would like to thank God for all that he has blessed me with. And then I was lost. But the thing that flashed before my eyes, first and foremost, was I can remember being lost in 95, not knowing which path I'd be going in life. And I was faced with a lot of adversity. But God showed me a vision, a four-letter word, and that word was Duke.
It wasn't too long ago when I was a bright-eyed freshman from California, unaware of how I would manage my four-year career at Duke, so far away from home. To me, my career was like the word life. So many obstacles, so many decisions, so many wins, so many losses, so much excitement, so much disappointment. Yet I feel that this is what makes my career so special, because my Duke experience has given me a head start on life.
Can everybody see me? I was sitting listening to the other seniors speak, and I was, secretly hoping for one of them to start crying, so I didn't have to be the first guy to do that. But oh well. My career has kind of been a roller coaster. I've been through some great times. I've been kind of pretty low at some points. But through it all, I think that's what this night's about, is there's been one constant, and that's the people and the relationships that I've formed and been around. So many people have opened their hearts to me, bent over backwards for me, cared for me, loved me, here that I can never repay them, and I'd love to be able to, but I can't. It just amazes me. And that, and those relationships, and those people, is what I'll be thankful for more than anything else, even the wins and the losses. Although the Carolina game was pretty sweet, Coach. And to those who put their heart into Duke basketball, I would like to thank the sports info people, Mike Craig, Tom Kasempa, Mike Saab. I don't know how in the hell they got a fat Polish kid on the cover of Sports Illustrated, but I didn't ask any questions. Lauren Howard and Jerry Brown. Jeff Lemire and Lee Rashman. Sonny, he helped build this physique. Dr. Kennedy, thanks for all the tutors. Dr. Berlin and Dave Englehart.
I'm gonna miss you, Doc. Thank you for everything.
I want to thank the managers, all of you guys, especially the senior managers, Joe and Lucy. The coaches that aren't here anymore, and Tommy Amaker, Coach O'Toole, Coach Goddett, Coach Swinson, and Coach Bray. I'd like to apologize to those guys who had to find new jobs because I couldn't get it done.
To the fans, They said across the country when I was in LA that the Cameron Crazies were the best fans ever. I didn't believe it until I got here.
Coach Dave, the best dressed man in the South, thanks for bringing that smile every day to practice. That meant more than you probably knew. Coach Dawkins, having been there and done that, thanks for caring. Thanks for wanting us to fly and soar and see all the things you were able to. Coach Quin, never lose that enthusiasm you have for teaching. I remember when you were in the law school and you would come over and you would try to coach, or you would coach whoever would listen to you. Back then, that was just me.
I think this is his name, Coach Krzyzewski.
You've always told us a season is a lifetime, and you've always shown us that a lifetime is like a long season, a season for which we can all be champions.
To his family, who've been there through it all, to see the expressions on their face, it was almost like they were out there playing the game themselves, and they gave all of themselves to us, and I want to thank them for that.
And my family, and they're the best.
My mother, Diane Elliott.
I love you too, Dad.
In the journey to become a man, thank you for providing those footsteps for me to follow.
I'd love to go on for 10 minutes about them, but if I speak any longer than I am now, I will break down in complete and utter sobbing. But to all you guys, you know I love you.
To my teammates, we had an unbelievable year.
I just want to thank you guys for allowing me to be part of your life. You're the best.
Every time we come together like a fist, we're surrounded by those things that are priceless. Recognize those things and hold them close to your heart.
The young freshmen that we had coming in this year, you guys were unbelievable. I've never seen a group of guys come in and make an impact like you guys have done.
Recognize the heart of Nate James, the fierce focus of Mike Chappelle.
Chris Carawell, we've grown close over the years. I remember when I had you on my visit and you didn't talk much. Now I can't stop you from talking.
Recognize the competitive fight of Jay Heaps. Recognize the resilience and the persistence of Taman Domzowski.
Trajan, my room dog. I lived with Trey for 3 years, and I just feel that, if I just had half the work ethic that you have with my athletic ability, somebody would be in trouble.
Because if you take all those things, add a little bit of Todd Singleton, you have Duke basketball in its finest hour. And those are the things you guys have given me, and for that I'll be eternally grateful. Thanks a lot, Duke.
This is my second home and my second family. God bless.
Thank you.
And now, it could get tough. I fought them off pretty well so far, but I don't know now. The two people I'm going to talk about now have made the most significant impact on my life in the last 4 years. Come on, Steve. First of all, I'd like to thank their family for allowing me to spend way too much time with them. That's great, and I appreciate it, and I love you guys for that. First off, I want to start with Q. Q, I've asked you so many questions over the past 4 years, and you've always had answers. We'll answer this one. How in the world am I supposed to come up with words to express my appreciation, feelings, and love for what you've done for me? Give me encouragement, support. You've been like a brother. You've been my psychologist. Lord knows I need one. My friend. And with all that, you never asked anything in return. In spite of that, you have my undying love and friendship. And the coach, as you can imagine, I had the hardest time writing this out. There's nothing I can say that'll do it justice, so I didn't even try. Our relationship is not something that can be written. It's not something that can be spoken. It's something that you feel. It's something that you see. When you remember me, I want you to remember the feeling that you had when we embraced at senior night. You and your lessons have served as an example that I'll always cherish. And with all that, the one thing above and beyond everything else that I'll always cherish is the fact that I loved you and you loved me back. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this evening.